I don't know if you remember, but back on October 1st, there was a series of stories by the Toronto Star, Global News, and National Observer targeted on the Saskatchewan oil patch. The stories were part of a much larger project, backed financially by the Corporate Mapping Project. The Corporate Mapping Project's website notes, "The tremendous concentration of power and influence we see in the fossil fuel industry today places sharp limits on our democracy. And as oil, gas, and coal corporations pursue their relatively narrow, short-term profit goals, crafting effective responses to climate crisis becomes more difficult." The Corporate Mapping Project shines a bright light on the fossil fuel industry by investigating the ways corporate power is organized and exercised. So as you can tell, this little project was really balanced, no doubt. Its lead-off piece came out around October 1st, targeting Saskatchewan, and in particular, the H2S issues in southeast Saskatchewan. Subsequent stories later in the month targeted the petrochemical production areas in Ontario and the other end of the pipeline. Expect more to come in the future. Now this lady over here, second from the left, that's Dr. Emily Eaton, and I've identified her as the prime anti-oil person in Saskatchewan. A few years ago, they had a little meeting in Saskatoon, and this meeting was to ban fracking. They were going to ban fracking in Saskatchewan, and yet they weren't going to hold that meeting in Carlisle, where Element is based, or Estvan, or Millennium used to be based, and a whole bunch of other companies used to be based. They're going to hold it in Saskatoon. And she was a keynote speaker. So that Saskatchewan was targeted by this project can be directly attributed to the impetus provided by University of Regina geography professor, Dr. Emily Eaton. Her Facebook page noted on October 1st, quote, "A heartfelt thank you to Patty Sontag for taking up my pitch and to Trish Elliott for spending the last 8 months of her life on this project, and to the many students across the country who worked so hard on this project. Thanks also to Rob Cribb, the National Observer, the Corporate Mapping Project for making this happen. No communities should be expected to live under these conditions." Now, don't kid yourself. The communities she's talking about are Redvers, Estevan, Oxbow, Weyburn. This is Patty Sontag. Sontag is listed as a series producer and as a Michener Fellow based at Concordia University. Eaton's editorial, published in a National Observer as part of the same series, was entitled, "Hey Saskatchewan, let's talk about the ugly side of oil." If you want to read the rest of that, look up the November 2017 edition, the editorial I did in pipelinenews.ca. It's a real doozy. Basically, I tied together the strings going from Eaton all the way to the series of stories and the family relations and whatnot. So now let me tell you a little bit about how this came down. Patty Sontag did some nosing around Estevan in 2017. One of the places she stopped by was Stampede Drilling. She even left her business card, which had the nice New York Times logo on it and everything. And she talked to the guy who runs the place, who asked if I would not say his name, Bill, but Bill said she came there on false pretenses and soon started asking some pretty pointed questions that were not appreciated. She was politely shown the door. Now, while sitting in Bill's office, he noted that she was incredibly nervous. Indeed, she was shaking. Now, this is what Bill told me, and he just couldn't figure out why. So I told him, "Bill, to her, you're Darth Vader. You're the devil personified. You actually pull dragons from the ground." Now, I've known Bill for a long time now. And he's no devil. You see, I've knocked on the doors of most of the businesses represented in this room. Over the past 10 years, I've probably spoken to a good chunk of you at one point or another. And over 10 years of doing pipeline news, do you know what I've found? Most of you are pretty damn good people. Most of us, and I include myself in this, in the oil patch, are good people who simply want to provide for their family. We work hard, and we just want to get home to our bed before someone else does. I used to be a big inch pipeliner, that's why I'm not that anymore. So when you're in the news business, it's good to have an opening joke or a story to break the ice, especially when you want to emphasize that you're not some asshole from CBC. I always tell people that I used to be a pipeliner. I sweated my nuts off at 30 above, kind of like right now, and I froze them off at 30 below. I caught pneumonia twice on the job, and the second time landed me in Grand Prairie Hospital for 3 days that I don't even remember. I used to be an excavator operator, but I decided I want to stay married, so I gave that up. 19 years later, as of last week, I still am married. But no, and if you're wondering why my wife isn't here, it's because she's running the kids over for dental stuff in Regina, so she didn't ditch me today. But anyhow, my point in this is that I am, and always have been, one of you. But to many people, especially in central Canada and on the left coast, we're evil. We're horrible people. We're the oil industry. We're the devil. Now these pictures I took about 10 years ago in the Manitou Sandhills of southeast of Lloydminster. You know, we're the horrible people that follow the strict environmental and safety rules. And if environmentalists and safety people breathing down our necks constantly, and yes, Dale Lewis, if you're here, I know that's your job, but we all appreciate you. I guess Dale's not here. So in the Manitou Sandhills in southeast of Lloyd, this environmentalist who I was doing a story on found this little fern. See that tiny little fern? On the proposed right-of-way. The right-of-way was moved at a cost of tens of thousands of dollars because she found that fern. You know, we are such bastards that we let our women work, vote, and even drive. Unlike Saudi Arabia. Geez, imagine that. We don't see the protesters picketing the Saudi oil tankers coming up the St. Lawrence River. You know, the one where Montreal routinely flushes raw sewage down? Yeah, that river, and that's the one you see on the screen. Take a good look at this slide here. That's St. Lawrence River, Montreal, August 10th, 2016. This is right around the time that Energy East was slowly dying. There are 5, count them, 5 tankers in this picture. They're unloading foreign oil in Montreal. But we couldn't build a pipeline there. If you zoom in, you'll see what this river is really full of. I guess I'm getting okay with the PowerPoint here. This past spring saw something remarkable. Both the Alberta United Conservative Party opposition and the New Democratic Party government started considering turning off the taps for the existing Trans Mountain pipeline to the lower mainland of British Columbia. In fact, they even passed legislation to do that. The idea was, if BC doesn't want the new Trans Mountain expansion pipeline, if they really don't want our oil, fine. Let's see how they do without it. Total embargo. Thank you. And there's something we can do about that too. In fact, I passed this on to some people in Regina. Because while we're at it, the Alliance Pipeline, which me and 1,800 other guys built over 1999 and 2000, handles all that Montney gas in northeastern British Columbia. Maybe it needs a toll applied to it for shipping through Alberta. And if Alberta's going to put a toll on it, maybe Saskatchewan should too. Now, I drove over that line on the way here. It crosses Highway 9 just north of Alameda, and you can find the compressor station there too. Now, a few years ago they goofed and got some sour gas in it, so that's all Montney gas being flared off there for a few days. Trudeau may have stolen my thunder by buying the pipeline on Tuesday. But let's think about what would be the result if the Trans Mountain Pipeline was turned off. It would make the 1970s oil embargo look like a cakewalk in the Lower Mainland. The National Post did a story saying, originally, it wouldn't hurt BC that much. A few weeks later, they did a follow-up, saying that some pretty smart people had corrected them and said that something like 80% of the petroleum servicing the Lower Mainland comes through that pipe, even if it goes to refineries in Washington State. Those refineries then, in turn, supply a lot of the Lower Mainland. Gasoline at $2 a liter? Are you kidding? There's no price high enough if the gas station is dry. It's mighty tough to fly to Asia if Vancouver International Airport can't get its jet fuel for its 787s. Oh, but wait. The airport is building its own pipeline for jet fuel brought in from Asia. The people in this room would like to know, how long are those Earth Muffin protesters going to be able to do that? Tweeting on their plastic phones, wearing synthetic clothes, holding up plastic signs, which they brought in their gas-guzzling SUVs to their oil protest. Maybe they'll paddle out in their fiberglass kayaks. Oh yeah, and this lady here, since I put the slideshow, she just got convicted of contempt of court and had to pay a $1,500 fine. Maybe parliamentarians who get convicted of contempt of court should go to jail. When this whole H2S hit a climax in October last year, I went to the student film part of it that was screened at the University of Regina School of Journalism. Now I should note, I never attended University of Regina Journalism School. I flunked out of mechanical engineering at the U of S, and then I learned through the School of Hard Knocks like a lot of you had. Maybe that makes me not a CBC asshole. At the end of a student film, which laid out all the warts of our industry, my blood was boiling. The two older ladies behind me, which you see highlighted here, were clucking in their disgust. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. So I turned to them and said, you know, you had a choice. I didn't see your horses tied up outside, or anyone else's. Every single person in this room is wearing synthetic clothing made of oil. You had a choice, ma'am, and you made it. It might have taken a minute for them to pick up their jaws off the floor. Why didn't they ride their horses? You tell me. Oh, that's right. You know the answer, and so do they. The hypocrisy of the oil critics in this country is unbelievable and unbearable, especially if you wear fire retardant clothing for your daily life. Back around 1997, I worked on a 42-inch pipeline out of Mooseman, just north of here. Many of you would know where that right-of-way is and where the compressor station near the Manitoba border is. That pipeline was supposed to become the Energy East, and is originally supposed to be in service by this year. 2/3 of it is already in the ground. It would have weaned Central Canada and Eastern Canada off of foreign oil. Foreign imported dirty oil. And I mean truly dirty oil. About 8 years ago, I was at the Wilson Basin Petroleum Conference in Bismarck. One of the regular speakers at this event is Harold Hamm, CEO of Continental Oil, which just happens to be the biggest oil producer in North Dakota. Sorry, Continental Resources. He just happens to be buddies with a guy named Donald Trump, which is why in 2016, Trump came and spoke at that very same conference. That also gave me the opportunity to ask him if he would approve the Keystone XL pipeline and invite TransCanada to build it. Trump said he would, but he wanted a piece. When he was elected, one of his first actions in office was to approve the Keystone XL. Now, I saw someone here wearing a Make America Great hat. Is he still around here? I think a lot of people in this room might appreciate that. Unfortunately, opposition in Nebraska means dirt still has not moved on that project yet. But I digress. Ham's an important guy in the oil industry in America, particularly because he has the ear of the president, and that's what makes him important. Ham said back in 2010 to this conference, a reporter asked me the other day, what's the big deal about energy independence? It means you don't have to send your kid over there to get killed. That's what energy independence means to America. Canadian oil from the oil sands is diluted of condensate. Middle Eastern oil is diluted of the blood of American soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. How many Americans would have traded offshore drilling, which Trump is now proposing, if it meant they never went to the Iraq War? What would it have been worth? If we put it in that context, who would have said no? How many future wars in the Middle East could be avoided if America really didn't need Saudi oil? What if Canada didn't need it either, or Nigerian or Venezuelan oil? How much blood has been spilled for Canadian oil? How many wars have been fought over it? At that same conference, in a question I put to one of the speakers, I said, I've been to pretty much every type of lease, right-of-way, battery, gas plant, and refinery in Saskatchewan, and I have never once seen an armed guard. Nor have I required an American infantry company as an escort to visit any of these sites. Our oil is not stained with the bloodshed of war. We live under some of the most stringent environmental, safety, and moral rules imaginable. Back in the fall of 2012, Enbridge built the Bakken expansion pipeline right past Redvers. Swears had its yard on the other side of town, just over there, and the pipeline crosses Highway 13 a little east of here. I finagled a day-long tour of Enbridge. Now, they brought out their PR person from Calgary to show me around, even though I've worked on every crew except main gang on a big inch pipeline, on Enbridge pipelines no less. But I was glad they put in the effort to show me around. While on this tour, I noticed that they were boring everything, and I mean everything. There was a little swale you see right here, that little part in the middle between the silt fences. The ground wasn't wet enough to get your boots wet if you walked across it, and they bored it at considerable expense. Now, back in 1997, when I was working on the Enbridge Terrace B expansion, I was an oiler, or a swamper, on an excavator. The operator I was partnered with was a surly son of a bitch who no one could stand. But my mom told me to keep my mouth shut, and I did. and I kept my job. And he could dig like no one's business. So they gave us a brand new hoe, tore the plastic off the seat, gave us a brand new pickup truck, and he still complained. And we were the swamp crew. And we dug every slough and pothole and swamp from the other side of Regina all the way to Fairlight, just north of here. I stood in every swamp and right-of-way, or swamp and slough on that right-of-way. And we often dug in water up to the top of our tracks. Now, if you drive that right-of-way now, I dare you to show me one place where now, 21 years later, our method of open cut was detrimental to the environment. But that's not how they do it anymore. No, sir. Not just swamps, but dry swales in the middle of a field, as I showed you, are bored no matter what. On the Bakken expansion and the Vantage pipeline done south of Bengoff, there were literally hundreds upon hundreds of bores. And I would argue that many of those were needless bores. But that's how the National Energy Board wants it, so that's what they get. Back then, in 1999, I was working for the Alliance Pipeline and on the road bore crew, 3 weeks after my wedding. We worked hard all summer, and the whole crew of some 600 people of Wasatch Pipeline typically got 4.5 kilometers of chainage, or progress, per day. That means every crew moved about 4.5 kilometers every day. But what's happened since then? This is the Alberta Clipper. Construction of the Alberta Clipper didn't start till the fall of 2008. The National Energy Board regulated pipelines like Keystone XL, Alberta Clipper, Enbridge Line 3 replacement, which is going on this summer in this area. They don't get built in the summer anymore. The NEB, in its infinite wisdom, is so concerned that a duck's nest might get disturbed that, at least since Alberta Clipper, they will not allow pipeline construction in summer, the most productive months of the year. In their infinite wisdom, it's better to slip and slide on the ice and snow, dealing with frost lumps, all because a few Canadian geese may have laid their not-so-golden eggs. Never mind that the farmer will drive his air seeder or sprayer over that exact same nest, over that exact same right-of-way. But we're the bad guys. Didn't you know? So we better get environmentally friendly, they tell us. The days of 4.5 kilometers of progress per day are long over. Now a spread boss will do backflips if he gets 3.5 kilometers of progress per day, or so I'm told. This is the bovine feces, which you might pronounce bullshit, that our industry has put up with. We grit our collective teeth and bear it. Logic and reason goes out the window. Social license will surely allow us to simply do our jobs, won't it? If we put a carbon tax on, surely they'll let us build our pipelines, right? Yeah. See how that's been going. This week marks the 10th anniversary of our first edition of Pipeline News in its current form. We spent a decade writing stories about the strength and character of the people in our industry. And Pipeline News considers itself to be part of the industry, just as you are. I like to say we're the only publication that truly gives a damn about the Saskatchewan oil patch. You know what we've done in the last 10 years? We've shown month after month that the Saskatchewan oil industry is full of good people doing the best they can to provide for their families. Like Don Ray of Crusader Drilling said to me the other day, quote, "We live here, we work here, we play here. We don't want to damage our homes or anyone else's for that matter. We are not the devil. We are good people doing honest work, providing for this country in one of the most important industries on this planet. And it's time the rest of Canada, and here's looking at you, Quebec, Ontario, and BC, it's time you realized it." Thank you very much.